Okay, hello and welcome to this demo where I'm going to be sculpting a mouth study in 1 hour. As far as supplies, I have some clay. This is non-drying modeling clay that I got from Dollar Tree. Came in a bunch of colors. I took some of the colors out and mixed the rest together to get this brown. And so it's a soft clay. That's what I'm going to be using. It's a little bit cooler than what I like. Usually for quick sculptures, you want a softer clay. And this is going to be life-size, if not a little bit bigger. I do have a little skull reference that I've drawn some guidelines in because I wanted to focus a little bit on the structure underneath the mouth for this study, the mandible, the mound of the mouth, the dental mound, and how it transitions to the nose. We're going to be talking about those features. And then I also have a knife and a basic sculpting tool. This one's one of my favorites. It's just got a flat tip on this end, a little bit more narrow of a shape on that end. And so that's what we're going to be doing. Let's go ahead and get started because an hour is not a lot of time to do a sculpture. So the first thing I'm going to do is just lay in this center line that you can see that's in the skull, this red line that is the center line of the face. We're going to just be building this out from the center of this board, or actually I'll move it up a little bit. Let's have the mouth be a little bit higher, easier to reach. I'm just going to put in a piece of clay to get us started with the center line. And then there's a bump for the mound of the mouth and a bump for the chin. So I'm just going to kind of press in some of the clay on this side. Let's see if you can see that. So that there's going to be this bump for the mound of the mouth, bump for the chin. Let me kind of re-situate some things so you guys can see. Let's see, I guess if I need to turn it, I'll turn it this way. So there you can kind of see what's happening there. Oh, as far as the backing, I just have a metal floor flange with a pipe. That's all I'm using as the backing, and I might use some clay to put this in place. Right now it's not. So let's just take some clay and kind of secure it to the bottom so it's not moving around on us too much. Just press that down. Same thing over here. And there we go. Okay, that should be about good. Let's see. I think it's a little bit off center. Let's get it right in the center, because then I'll be able to kind of judge the shape of what's going on here based on the shape of either side. So having it in the center of this plywood board is going to be helpful. Okay, so there we have just a rough indication of the front profile. You can see a little bump for the mound of the mouth, a bump for the chin, and that's enough to get us going. Let me just kind of smooth that out a little bit. There we go. And that's looking pretty good for the center line. And now I'm going to kind of build out the structure of the skull without thinking about the lips. A big problem that I see a lot of students make when sculpting the mouth is not to understand these underlying structures of the skull. And so by kind of having a skull doing a little study underneath, we get an understanding of that foundation that the mouth is built on top of. So it's not built on just a flat plane, a flat surface. There's very rounded forms underneath the dental mound, the mandible, the chin. All of those rounded forms add volume to the mouth that if you don't have it in place, the mouth is going to look very strange and it will not look correct. So what we want to do is we want to take some pieces of clay. I'm just going to make sure that this is pressed in. And I'm just going to start to lay in these features with just chunks of clay, thinking about this mound of the mouth. And for this, you can see these purple lines right here. I give those an indication, or I drew in those lines to indicate where the canines are. And that's usually where the mound of the mouth turns from the front plane right here to the side plane as it travels back. So if you think of it as a little, almost like a cylinder that has kind of a boxy shape to it, then that plane change usually happens at the canines. So we're going to go ahead and try to do a simplified version of that here. Let's push this back. And with these studies, as I'm doing these demos, I recommend trying to sculpt right along with. It's an hour, and so an hour, if you have an hour that you could take a break from social media or some other things, if you're interested in sculpture, and just sculpt right along with me, that's what I recommend for these. I have a lot of similar demos like this on my Patreon page, so this is kind of like a look at some of the demos that I've done in the past for my Patreon patrons, and I appreciate everybody that has supported over on Patreon. It's not that's not where I make a lot of income, so I haven't been really focused on it that much. The majority of my income comes from the online courses, but I do have a Patreon for people that are wondering, and that's more for people that want to get direct feedback on their work, and it also has these types of demos where I don't cut out, there's not as much edits in it. It's just kind of me sculpting and explaining what I'm doing as I'm working. Okay, so let me just clean up these forms. Usually you don't really usually have to clean up the forms that much as you're sculpting. If I was sculpting an actual portrait, which this is kind of preparation for me, because there's going to be a portrait sculpting competition I'm going to at the end of this week, September 2024, and I'm excited for that. But I wanted to kind of refresh my memory on some of the features, and so I've done the eye and the ear, and this one's the mouth today, and I'll try to do the nose tomorrow. And that way I just kind of have these in my mind, and I just wanted to share it with you guys too, because why not share the experience of sculpting. So here we have kind of if we thought of the skull, that opening of the nose, this little bump that I've given an indication of is called the nasal, the nasal, it's a little bone at the bottom of your nose. You can feel it. What is that? I forget it's not the septum, nasal septum. I think that's this center part right here. The nasal something. I can't remember. Anyway, there's a little bump at the bottom of your nose. The name is not as important as as just realizing it's there, and it just gives you an indication of where the nose begins when you're comparing the skull to the face, the portrait. So underneath the chin, there's this kind of W shape that we usually see. So I'm just gonna kind of add this triangular shape for the chin, and it creates kind of this W around the bottom of the mouth. Let's fill this in just a little bit. Something like that. And I'm also going to draw center line. Always helps, especially when you're doing something that's symmetrical, as I'm trying to do here. Make the sides a match, and having a center line always helps keep that accurate. Let me zoom in just a little bit so you guys can see a little bit better. Hopefully you can see a little bit better what I'm doing. And I'll move this over. Okay, so you see what's happening, hopefully. So now I'm just going to I'm taking the knife and getting strips of clay that I'll be able to work with to finish up this sculpture. That's probably enough, because most of the mass is in this mound of the mouth. So that's let's say we could even have an indication of this going over to the cheekbones a little bit. So that mound of the mouth kind of curves back and over to the cheekbones. Let's just say that there's cheekbone right here. It's maybe not, doesn't come out that far, but maybe like that. And then it dips back, and then the same thing on the other side. Let's see, cheek. That mound of the mouth kind of just dips back, pushes itself back to the other side. Let me see if I can actually, will this stick if I put it there? Maybe not. Boop. No, probably not. Let me put this here so you guys can see. Oh, maybe you can't see if I have it there. What about over here? Then it's like in the way. I'm trying to see where you guys can see and I can see what I'm doing. It's kind of a tricky thing. Okay, so yeah, let's just kind of push that back. We have this going up towards the chin, and then it's pushing back. Just going to give a little bit of an indication of the clay to represent that. And this comes up a little bit more. This skull is a great reference. I definitely recommend having some sort of skull reference to be able to observe when you're working. So maybe if I can find a link, I might even put a link to be able to purchase one of these. I had them on my online store. I don't know if I still have them, but you can also find them on eBay, probably for cheaper than it was on my online store, because then you're going direct to the maker, but then I don't get a kickback. So, but you know, I totally understand. You know, artists, you want to save some money. Let's see. So I don't want this to get too thick right here, but I think that's okay right there. So there you can see just a little bit of what's happening with the skull. There's the mound of the mouth, the mental protuberance of the chin, or just that chin shape, kind of a triangular shape, and then the nasal, I think it's the nasal septum, or the nasal protuberance, something. Anterior nasal spine, I think it's what it's called, anterior nasal spine. This little bump right there that you can feel. If you feel at the bottom of your nose, you can feel that bump. And so now that that's in place, let's go ahead and we can start laying in the lips on top of this foundation. So obviously when you're doing an actual skull, or when you're studying a person, sculpting a person, you don't have to lay in all of this structure exactly as I've done, but you want to have that in mind. You want to realize that you're not building on top of a flat surface. There's the curve of the center line that runs through, and then there's the curve of the features, that they're built on a curved rounded surface. And actually, let's do this. So let's turn to the side a little bit so you guys can see a little bit from the side, and we'll give an indication of the lips on top, a little bit of the nose, because that'll also give us some more visual information. And we're just going to build right on top of that center line. So we're going to say, okay, the nose, you know, maybe at the bottom of the nose maybe looks something like this. Just kind of building a wall of clay. And we'll do this maybe, that looks more like a masculine, a male nose, which I guess is fine. We'll just do that. But yeah, we'll just do that for now. So, and then we got the upper lip. It's got some thickness to it. And then we're gonna Then there's a separation to the lower lip. And let's see. And then a transition to the chin. But let's push there. And we'll add some meat to the chin as well. Okay, so there you can see we have a start of the lips. Let's turn back to the front. Those are built on top of that center line, and then we have the mound of the mouth to think about, or to build on top of. It's the framework, the structure that we're building on top of. This isn't a nose study, but I do want to give just a little bit of an indication of the form of the nose, because the fat pads and forms of the mouth, come down from the nose, and they're very much related, and you want to keep that in mind as you're sculpting the mouth. So let's get this, move it over a little bit, because I feel like I lost the center line. I don't want to lose that. So there you can see what I'm doing so far. Let's go ahead and just add in that upper lip with that piece of clay. Same thing on the other side. Upper lip kind of curving down. And then, because this mound of the mouth is present, we want to just build some clay up, and there's actually quite a bit of mass in this upper part of the lip between the nose and the mouth. So we're just gonna lay in some clay there. There we have a little bit of the upper lip. Let's do the same. Same with the lower lip. So with the lip, you may have heard that there's like 5 forms, so I'll go lay these in. So there's one in the middle. We'll lay a little piece right there in the middle. One in the middle, 2 on the side on the upper lip, and then on the lower lip, there's just kind of these two forms, like pillowy, soft forms that are on either side on the lower lip. And that kind of creates the crease of the mouth as the lips come together. So there we have like a crude, rough representation of that, and we'll clean up all this later. It won't look so crazy later, but I just want to establish these forms. Then coming off of the lip, there's these like cylinder-like forms that are just kind of sticking up and forward from that lower lip. And so I'm just going to take a piece of clay on either side and put these in. Now I'm exaggerating all of these. You can see it's very rough and looks very very strange, almost ape-like, because of how exaggerated everything is. But it will, as we clean it up and soften the forms, it'll get better. And you don't want to over-exaggerate these forms that I'm talking about like I'm doing right now. The mouth is very soft. All of the forms are going to be soft. But I just want to emphasize that structure that is underneath, that is often not understood, especially new students, new artists. They don't really think about what's going on under the surface that much. Let's go ahead and add some of the fat pads of the face around the mouth. So there's a fat pad, that's the nasolabial fat pad. It's going to be on either side of the mouth. Starts above the nostrils and then wraps down around the corners of the mouth, coming down this way. So there you can see that nasolabial fat pad. I'm exaggerating, or I'm just laying it in, and then we'll smooth things out later. Let's do the same thing on the other side. Nasolabial, naso for nose, labial for the lips or the mouth. Nasolabial fold, and that creates the nasolabial crease that starts above the nostrils. Let's just give an indication of those nostrils. And the nostril, right now, the nose, it's really just to say, like, this is where the forms are starting so that I know where to bring them down to. But I'm not super focused on the nose right now, but we'll just give like enough to say that that's the nose. It's like a Michael Jackson nose. That's what it's looking like right now. Okay, so we have these forms around the mouth. Then underneath this, there's a couple other fat pads that form around the jowls. So that's kind of this area right here that kind of comes and wraps around the chin. You can sometimes see it on older people. They have the jowl fat or something, kind of that bulldog look. So there's two fat pads, and then one just kind of wraps around. I'm just laying those in as a rough indication of what's happening under the surface. Okay, let's go ahead and add in the nodes of the mouth. These are at the corners of the mouth, and it's where all of the muscles attach around the corners of the lips, which causes kind of this bump in the mouth, or a bump around the outside corner of the lips. And now we can go in and just give a little bit more of an indication of what's happening with that crease of the mouth between the upper and lower lips. Let's do that. There we go. And I'm going to turn this to the side. Let's turn it to the side a little bit to see what's going on and try to understand it a little bit better. So it looks like I've lengthened this part right here, the nasal septum, so I'm actually going to bring the nose down a little bit. Or that's not the nasal septum, that's the philtrum. The philtrum, this part underneath the nose. So I'm just going to bring the nose down by adding a little piece of clay, shorten that up, because this is, it's just a study of the mouth, so I can move things around on the other features without messing things up. Usually the center line I would establish early on if it's a specific person, and then I would try to stay very true to that center line and base everything else off of it. And I wouldn't be moving around the center line that much as I'm sculpting the rest. But because this is just a feature study, we can move those around. And because I'm not really using a specific person as a reference, I might use myself just a little bit. I might need to move this mirror or something. Actually, let me grab another. I have another mirror over here. Let me grab that. One sec. So just observe those. Oh my goodness. Oh, come on. Okay. It's kind of hard getting out of this chair once I'm in it. So just observe those forms. That's what we're trying to do at this point. This anatomy and structure of the mouth. These are the important underlying forms, and now that we have those in place, we're just going to soften things up, and I have an extra mirror that I can use to see myself, so I'm going to be just observing my own mouth as a reference. It's what I do all the time because I don't always have access to a model, and I've got a little bit of a beard now, so it's not as won't see those forms as much now as I used to, but I can see enough to kind of inform what's going on. Okay, let's see, let me move this over a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and start to soften things up. So I'm just going to add clay in between the forms that we've established and start to soften everything. Let's pull the nostrils down a little bit on either side. Comes together something like that. And then fill in this a little bit so it looks less like a older person. When you really exaggerate these fat pads, you can see it looks like this almost gives me the feeling of an older, like Native American Indian type structure of the mouth. But we're going to just going to change the shape of that lower lip just a little bit. There we go, and pull that in. Okay, so that's I don't want the nose to be distracting right now. It's distracting me because of how weird it's looking. It's just, and there's so that septum kind of comes, or that, I keep saying the septum for everything, but that form under the nose that transitions into the philtrum kind of does something like that. Okay, well, I'll just smooth those out. Okay. Let's see, then let's soften up these forms that are underneath the mouth that are coming up right there. Wrap some clay around. Same thing on the other side. Okay. Then let me grab some more clay. So right now I'm just softening things up, changing the forms a little bit and moving things around, kind of thinking about it as just adding some flesh on top of the skeleton that we laid in. And the mouth is a very soft, pillowy area. If we don't represent that accurately, then it just feels strange. If it feels like an area that's too rough, where there's just a lot of hard features that don't blend together, they don't flow into one another, then we can lose some of that naturalistic, realistic feeling, and it starts to look more amateur, more, like somebody that doesn't really understand the forms, and so just lays in some of the basic things like the crease of the mouth and some bumps for the lips, but it doesn't have that structure and that soft flesh feel like it's supposed to. Let's kind of get a better indication of what's going on with the cheeks. So this is transferring over, and you can see I'm smoothing out a lot of the forms. We want to smooth those out. We don't want those to be. We can pull them back later if we need, but we don't want them to be so exaggerated that it doesn't feel soft and supple and flesh-like. So I'm trying to soften everything. Here we got there's kind of a little bit of a bump with the upper lips as they transition. And the lips kind of curve. They kind of, if you were to take a knife and just kind of roll it up, that's kind of how they curve. It's like the inside of the body kind of turning towards the outside. And there was a great demo of the lips. One of the first, when I was first getting into sculpting, one of the demos I saw, and I just thought it was so cool. It's by Eric Arneson, or not Eric Arneson, though he does have good content. It's by Rick Caselli, and he does a great demo of the mouth. He has that up on YouTube. If I remember, I'll put a link to that. Also a great resource for sculpting the mouth. He does it on top of a more established portrait, but kind of a similar method of building on top of the underlying anatomy, which I think is very helpful. Okay, and then we have some forms there. I'm going to soften this right here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is come in with this tool. I'm just going to take like little pieces of clay, and I'm going to start to try to establish the secondary forms on the surface a little bit better with this. There's kind of a, like I said, there's kind of a little border around the lips, both the upper and the lower lip, as it kind of turns. I'm going to maybe have this mouth just slightly open. As a way to increase the size of that crease between the lips and the corners of the mouth. Corners of the mouth, you could think of it as like a donut, where there's the hole in the donut at the corner, and then a rounded form that moves out around, or out and away from that hole in the corner, hole in the donut. Little donut. Reminds me of there was a song we used to sing when we were little. How does it go? Hopped around the corner and I hopped around the block and I hopped right into the donut shop. I spied a little donut just sitting there for me, so I gave the lady my 5-cent piece. She looked at the money and she looked at me and she said, "This money's not good for me. There's a hole in the middle and it goes right through." So there's a hole in the donut too. Jump in the bread box, you crumb. So hopefully that helps you remember how the corners of the mouth are. Just think of that. Walked around the corner and I walked around the block. Okay, so now we're going to soften, and the outside corner of the bottom lip is it's like a more soft transition towards the outside and a more abrupt transition here in the middle. I want to give an indication of that, and that's because of these cylindrical forms that are connected to there, and then there's this rounded W shape, you can see right there, that's made by the forms of the mouth connecting with the chin. Let's go ahead and soften that up. Where are we at? We're half an hour in, so we're making pretty good progress. Let's see if I can't get it a little bit more refined and defined, as my sculpting instructor in college would say. Refine and define everything. Okay, so I'm coming across the form, smoothing things out. It's trying to check, make sure that it's even from side to side. Let's make sure we're not losing that center line. Taking the tool and kind of going over the surface, wrapping around to try to clean up that form of the chin. And this kind of wraps around to those fat pads that we talked about. Fat pads of the face, which is a great lesson here on my channel. If you type in fat pads of the face, I think it'll come up with the lesson where I talk about that. And that is I feel like a very under-discussed, under-talked about anatomical anatomy lesson that I feel like more people should be aware of. I'm trying to make sure that I'm matching on either side what's going on. Let's draw some guidelines. Know what's happening. What's happening here? Got that creases, and forms around there. So there you can kind of see what's going on with those forms so far. And here, when I look at it from this side, I feel like this form here could be a little bit larger, move back a little bit farther. And that inside corner of the mouth kind of wraps around. So these exercises, doing these facial feature studies, is a great way to improve fast. If you struggle with any area of the face, just do that feature, like 1 hour a day of that feature for, a week, and you'd be really surprised just how much you improve. But try to be thoughtful as you're doing it. You're not just sculpting it without thinking. You're maybe using references, maybe copying a master study or a master sculpture that you like, or using yourself as a reference, trying to really study the forms and features, not just mindlessly sculpting without any reference or anything like that. But if you do it where you're thoughtful in your approach, then you can really improve quite a bit with just an hour a day of these types of studies. If you're doing these quick sketch studies, I like, and if they're life size, I like a softer clay. That's why this non-dry modeling clay is totally fine. It's kind of soft. If you're doing anything small and detailed and you're going to go to a high finish, then I feel like it's a little bit too soft. But for these kind of sculpture sketches, studies type things, I feel like it's a really good option. So let's see, kind of going off camera a little bit. So I feel like I made the kind of beginner mistake of pushing these corners of the mouth right here out just a little bit too far. It's really easy to do because, you know, we think, oh, the lips, you know, come out, so we want to push those out really far, but they usually are not as far out as we think. So I'm just gonna kind of soften that up a little bit. And add a little bit more clay to this outside node of the mouth. Same on the other side. And I'm gonna be looking at myself, the outside corners, trying to now make that just a little bit closer to reality, to a realistic looking mouth. Or if not realistic, at least well informed, that you understand what's going on with those features. Let's kind of soften up this coming across that fat pad right there. Rounded things off, softening things up. Let me actually grab another tool. Like these types of tools for these areas. These homemade tools. So softening up this node of the mouth on this side, and then I'll go try to kind of match it on the other side. This one, that kind of Cupid's bow shape of the crease of the lips is very exaggerated in this one. So most lips will be more subtle than this. This one's kind of an exaggerated study. And the subtlety is really where you can make it look very lifelike. If it's too exaggerated with some of these forms, even though it's good to be aware of them, you have to put them in a way that feels natural, not like you're overemphasizing them to the point where it almost distracts from the sculpture. Okay, where are we at? 46 minutes. How's it looking? And then I usually find, well, at least on my lips, this border around the outside of the lips on the bottom lip comes all the way to the corner. Then on the top lip, it ends just a little bit before the corner, kind of tucks in. So on the bottom, this border runs to the very inside, and on the top, it kind of ends a little bit in front. I don't know if that's with everybody, but that's just something I've noticed on myself. And so you have to look for things like that, that you wouldn't necessarily, it's not necessarily intuitive, like, oh, one of the borders around the lips is going to end a little bit in front of the other. You wouldn't necessarily just assume that that's true, but when you observe and look at the reference carefully, you might find that that's the case. Or there might even be people where it's the reverse. I don't know if that's something that varies that much or if it's pretty consistent. But it's just something that I've found to be the case with myself and a lot of the people that I've sculpted. Let's go ahead and I'm just going to come across and kind of soften these forms, push them together. Same thing here. Soften things up by adding a little bit of clay in the middle. And pulling the tool over those forms to kind of combine them and soften everything. And I'll try to keep you guys updated with the sculpture competition. I don't know how much I'll be able to film. I don't know what the rules of that'll be, but if I can film some of that, I'll try to do that and share with you guys the results of that competition. Should be fun. I think it's just one day, so I think we have two modeling sessions. I don't know how long they're going to be, but it's not a lot of time, especially for a portrait. But it's, it's enough time to get a sketch in. So, and it's water-based clay, which is often, when it's nice and hydrated, when it's nice and soft, it's pretty easy to work with. So hopefully that's the case. That should be a fun thing. It's always fun to compete with other sculptors. I really like that. That's why I like the online competition things. Okay. Okay, what are we at? 50 minutes? Let me look at what's happening with the sculpture, with the forms. See if we can't make things just a little bit better in the time we have remaining. More on this fat pad, trying to match the from side to side as much as I can. Maybe a little bit more on that part of the nose. And then I'm running the tool along that crease to make sure that the clay is well attached, and then I come over the form to smooth it out. Because if you try to smooth out the form along the form this way, it doesn't look as good. So if you're struggling to smooth things out to get the surface looking nice, try coming across the form instead of along the form. And that often is enough to help students smooth things out a little bit better. So I'm coming across those forms, trying to blend these into one another, soften things up. Same thing with the chin. We'll soften those forms. I kind of pulling and mixing that clay together from one form to another. And pulling things around. I just take my fingers and kind of press the clay into these. It's another way of softening it. And I'm gonna actually blend a little bit the the forms of the lips together. Like fill in, overfill these inside creases, because that's kind of a fun look sometimes. Because I don't know, when we have those outside forms accurate, our mind is able to kind of fill in these inside areas, so it still feels pretty accurate. You can see I removed the crease, but all the outside forms are in place, so it still looks very natural. Here that crease is in place. Here that crease is removed. And I do think I like that a little bit better. I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side. Just fill it in a little bit. Just a little bit. A little bit of clay. Round it off. That's really fun, that way of kind of filling in some areas, and then your mind is able to just fill in the blanks as long as all the surrounding information is accurate. The structure feels good. So I look over here, I'm seeing that there's some areas that feel like they're come in a little bit too much. I'm going to round off those or add some fullness. Okay, we're coming close to the end. Let's do the same thing on this side, just a little bit more fullness in that area. Like that. I'm just moving things around little by little. Okay, so that is coming up on the end. Just as I'm finishing this up, be sure to check out my online sculpting courses. There's a figure sculpting course, a portrait sculpting course, and a hand sculpting course. Those are all, they're like, it's like an online college course where there's assignments and video lessons, and you can follow at your own pace. Once you purchase the course, it's yours forever, and so you can go back and do the assignments as many times as you want. You can upload the assignments, images of your sculptures over at Proko.com underneath the video lessons. And that's free to do even if you haven't purchased the course, so I definitely recommend taking advantage of that. And I hope if you have the resources that you'll invest in those courses. That's how I try to support my family, and so I appreciate anybody that purchases those courses. You can also find more demos and get specific feedback and critiques through my Patreon. And I also have some ebooks that I think are helpful, an artist's X-ray vision, one on the male figure, one on the female figure, and there's links to those down below as well. Those are just $10, and it's 250 plus pages of references, each of those. So each one is around 250 pages. And just some helpful visual diagrams and things to help you better understand the figure, things that I've found to be very helpful. So I hope you'll consider that as well. And as always, I hope you can stay creative and productive. There's the final look at a 1 hour mouth study. I'm pretty happy with this one. I think it turned out better than the eye study and the nose study, and the ear study. So I'm happy with this one. It's not perfect. An hour is not a ton of time for a sculpture, but for now it is good enough. And so stay creative, stay productive. I'll see you guys in another video. Hopefully. We'll see if I see you. If you come back, then, like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and if you like this kind of stuff. See you guys.